Latricia is a 26-year-old mother from Milwaukee who has a 4-month-old baby that was born with a heart defect. The baby can only ingest a special baby formula that won't trigger his allergies, but this formula costs $75 a can. And this mother has not gotten her SNAP benefits for over a month now, and as a result is struggling to figure out how to feed her child. Like many of you, I have spent the past several days reading stories of and speaking with people who have been denied their SNAP benefits. Many Americans live in a state of extreme financial precarity. It's well known that close to 40% of Americans cannot afford an unexpected $400 medical bill. It's well known, and frankly, it's also accepted, because we have lived like this, and we continue to live like this, and we haven't done what we would need to do to change it. So there's Mary, who works full-time in a grocery store, surrounded all day by food in the aisles, but once she spends her salary paying for rent and electricity and her cell phone, she doesn't have any money left to pay for food. Without her SNAP benefits, she's afraid she won't be able to eat. There's a mother in Texas who is struggling to feed her 4 children, including 2 teenage boys. Reading about her story was a particular gut punch for me, maybe because I know about how much food a 16-year-old boy needs to eat. Without SNAP, this mother was forced to go to the food pantry for the first time in her life. And she's worried that the box of food that she brought home just won't be enough for her family. And in 2 weeks' time, they will be completely out of food and out of money. Meanwhile, here in Los Angeles, a single mother of 2 with disabilities shares that she is embarrassed and humbled and humiliated, but she needs to ask for help because she does not know how she's going to get back on her feet with these cuts, let alone begin to rebuild her life. And not far from that mother, there's the apartment that was raided by ICE agents in North Hollywood, abducting a mother and daughter. Their loved ones have been left with no recourse, no financial ability to pay their bond or support their family members' return, and they struggle to determine what to do now. And a teenage boy in Oregon cries and explains that he's scared for his parents to walk out of their house to go to work because they might get abducted by agents. They came here only to make a life for their kids, he says, and we're being treated like animals because of the way we look and the way we talk. He says, everyone I know is scared. I'm scared that one day at school, I'm going to get held up by men wearing masks and not showing IDs. I am scared I am never again going to see the people I love. And meanwhile, the world's richest man was granted this week a $1 trillion pay plan. And a sledgehammer has been taken to the East Wing to build a ballroom befitting of kings. I have spoken in this place many times of Sodom and Gomorrah, of the spirit of scarcity that permeated the culture in that place, creating norms that are shockingly resonant to our contemporary reality here in the land of abundance. I have shared with our community again and again over the years the way that these cities functioned in the rabbinic imagination, the vicious, sadistic nature of the torture that was meted out to the residents of those cities deemed so irredeemable that God could think only to destroy them. The way the people of those towns tormented the poor, the way they took advantage of the most vulnerable. For them, the cruelty was the point. What was the sin of Sodom, asks the prophet Ezekiel? Only this, gaon, arrogance. They had so much, plenty of bread, untroubled tranquility, and yet he says they disdained the poor and the needy. In their arrogance, they committed an abomination before God, and so God destroyed them. The rabbis in Masechet Sanhedrin are very clear from whence this spirit of scarcity emerged. The people of Sodom recognized that they lived in a land from which bread comes with the dust of gold. We have everything we could ever need, they said. Why would we want foreigners here in our land? Surely they will come here only to divest us of what is rightfully ours. And so they devised all kinds of strategies of extreme cruelty so that it would be known around the world that theirs was not a place of asylum, of refuge. What was the sin of Sodom? Their arrogance, their greed, their viciousness. It was the thrill they got from humiliating the stranger, from torturing the most vulnerable, even among their own. We've spoken about all of this before over the years. We've spoken not only about the norms of Sodom, not just the mob mentality, but the way that their judges, the arbiters of their legal system, Shakrai, whose name means liar, and Shakrurai, habitual liar, and Zaifai, the forger, and Matzle Dina, the perverter of justice. How these men, these evil leaders, would pass laws and would render the cruelest of judgments upon the most vulnerable. We've spoken here about how in Sodom, when a person was struck and wounded by another, they would force the victim to pay the perpetrator for the service of bloodletting. Anyone caught supporting the stranger, or feeding the hungry, or offering sanctuary to the pursued, or filming an ICE raid, they too would find themselves in grave danger. For our rabbis, this was never theoretical. Even speaking these truths of the offenses of Sodom posed a real danger. For the spirit of scarcity, once it is awakened, is very hard to contain. And so we read the story of Rav Yossi, who was once teaching in a town called Tzipori. And he spoke about all of these matters, the various methods of theft that were employed in Sodom. And that very night, the Talmud tells us, 300 thieves broke into homes all across the city in order to replicate the methods of the Sodomites. The people of the town were furious. They came to berate Rav Yossi, stop talking about these things. Why are you teaching people how to harm others? This isn't theoretical. This isn't ancient history. In every generation, there could be people who share the heartlessness of Sodom. The threat has never died. Rav Yossi, by the way, responds saying, I'm just a rabbi. How was I to know they would take me so seriously? Our community has learned these texts. We have parsed these ideas for years. And yet every time I've shared these stories, preached the warnings of Sodom, it has never before felt quite as real, quite as achingly resonant, as urgent as it does today. Because this week, we read about a 25-year-old from Colorado who snuck into a Walmart parking lot and climbed into the dumpster to grab as much as she could. She was able to score a few bags of frozen vegetables, some fruit, a little bit of cheese, and some moldy bread. She had tried the food bank, but as she said, by the time she got there, everything was already gone. So here's an irony in Parshat Vayera. In a Torah portion named after vision, one that repeatedly uses sight and vision as a mechanism for advancing the narrative. Vayisa'ena vayar, v'hinei shlosha anashim. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and he saw, and behold, there were 3 people, vayar, vayaratz. He saw them and he ran to them. The repetition of this word, vayar, 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 makes the rabbis ask why. There's nothing superfluous in the text. It must be because it's not just speaking about physically seeing something. It's about a deeper kind of insight that is not dependent on physical sight. To see and to understand. In a parasha whose watchword is sight, there is a strange, mysterious case of collective blindness. So 2 of the angels, or the messengers, who have visited Abraham go and travel to Sodom, where they encounter an angry mob, furious by their breach of the city's closed borders. The men threaten them with sexual violence. Lot, who is Abraham's nephew, attempts to protect the angels from this angry mob by bringing them into his home. And he himself goes outside to try to reason with them. And in a kind of perverse application of his uncle Abraham's hospitality, Lot offers his own virgin daughters to the mob as long as they don't harm the visitors. This is when the angels from within Lot's home stretch out their hands, pull Lot inside, and then strike all of the men clamoring outside with sanverim, with temporary blindness. Some of the rabbis read this literally. The people outside were struck with a kind of blinding light, so bright that they could no longer see where the door was, keeping those people who were inside temporarily safe. But I got curious about this word, sanverim, and the kind of temporary blindness, and found that the word actually only occurs twice in the Tanakh. And the one other place is in a narrative in 2 Kings. And in that place, too, it's clear that the plague is not actual blindness. It's clear that this is a metaphorical blindness meant to indicate a lack of understanding, an inability to see the others, not unlike those Egyptians who would later suffer under the plague of darkness. Now, this inability or unwillingness to see the other becomes a metaphor for the sins of the entire city. Here is a population that cannot see the humanity that dwells within their midst. Listen to how Radak interprets this. Sanverim, he says, is a composite of two words, saneh and ra'ya, meaning one who hates looking. In other words, it's not that the people of Sodom couldn't see the pain that they were causing, that they were shielded from the human impact of their cruel laws and ways. It's not that it wasn't visible to them. It's that they hated looking at it. They did not want to see it. So how is it possible for us to live in a society of such profound disparity, a place of marble-walled White House bathrooms with gold fixtures on one hand, and a single mom from New Jersey on the other, parenting two children, one with autism, who usually receives several $100s a month in SNAP benefits, but who is today holding a $50 balance and wondering how she'll feed her kids? How is this possible? It's only possible when we fail to see one another, when we, like the people of Sodom, hate seeing the impact of the laws and policies and practices and norms of our culture. I want to say that I understand why people would look away. It's been years now of anguished hearts, and we have taken in so much pain. There's so much to hold here in this country, in Israel, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan, all over the world. But I want to say today that it is incumbent that we not turn away from one another, that we continue to see, even when the overwhelm, when the exhaustion feels like it's almost too much for our hearts to bear. I hope in our most desperate moments that we will remember that the hero of the story of Sodom was neither those angels nor Lot, the nephew of Abraham, but one young, unnamed girl. Someone from that place who refused to close herself off from the human suffering around her. Someone who secretly brought food to a hungry person in her town, helping to sustain him not only with her food, but also with her grace and with her generous heart. When that girl was discovered by the people of Sodom, she was executed by the leaders of the town. But her cry, her voice, her heart, her legacy awakened the Holy One. And her story has now been told for thousands of years, and it should awaken us all. I want to thank those in our community who have answered our call in the past days for funds to support those among us who are dependent on SNAP benefits, and those who stepped forward in the months before that to help strengthen and support the members of our community who are vulnerable to these ICE raids and those whose immediate family members were abducted from their workplaces and already deported to Central America. I thank you for answering the call. I thank you for your donations, and I thank you even more for your humanity. I thank you for stubbornly and defiantly pushing back against the culture of scarcity that normalizes the closing of our hearts not only to pain far away, but to pain that is right here in our midst. I thank you for your love and your care and your determination to turn to see one another, to love one another, starting literally right here in this room in our own community. And to those in our community who are in need, and I know that there are many, I see you. And I want you to know that we are here to support you. We will never give ourselves over to the culture of scarcity. Together we will forge a new culture in this place of so much abundance. We will and we must. Shabbat Shalom.